Okay, we've heard from the politicians, we've heard from the corporates. Let's now look at what the country's leading economists are saying on Budget 2024. My first guest, Arvind Virmani, member NITI Aayog, former Chief Economic Advisor. Dr. Virmani, your big takeaways. If I were to ask you what you believe is the biggest message the Finance Minister has sent out from Budget 2024.
So, as you correctly point out, each one of us looks at it from our own perspective, and my perspective is of medium long-term growth. So, from that perspective, I think the most important thing is the part about employment and skilling. Let me take 1 minute to tell you why. You know, there has been a lot of discussion about the so-called demographic dividend. I've done a lot of analysis of this, and it's in my working paper, but I won't go into that. But the basic thing is that the share of working population of India is going to rise, and that of other countries like USA, Europe, Japan, Russia, all these countries are going to decline. So the only way, in fact, and the major way in which we are going to become a upper middle income country or a developed country is by increasing the job skills of the people. So I think this is probably the first budget which makes it an important central part of it, and looks at the employment problem from the perspective of skills. Just one more sentence. The way I put it very simply is that jobs and skills are two sides of the same coin. And I'm not speaking off the top of my head. I've spent the last 12 to 18 months studying the whole skilling problem. It's a very complex problem. And of course, in this budget, they've introduced about 5 new programs. It's so complex that really we are chipping away at this problem, and hopefully we'll learn enough in the next few years to make them even better.
You know, we're reflecting some of those issues of having internships, of giving companies also incentives to hire interns, to train them, to skill them. This is obviously, as you said, a long-term exercise. Many believe, though, what about the short term? This is a country which at the moment needs young people to get employment before the demographic dividend turns into a disaster. Do you believe that the government has recognized that there is now a serious challenge of making people not just employed but employable?
So let me again address the two kind of, and I wouldn't call them myths, but mixing of short and medium term. What do we mean by short term? So 2 facts, and again this is from my working paper. I'm not talking about this from the top of my head. One is that the worker population ratio has gone up over the last 7 years, 6 years, to 2017 to 18 to 22 to 23, where we have consistent PLFS data. There's a very clear uptrend in the worker population ratio. What does that mean? The rate of growth of jobs is faster than the rate of growth of population, one factor. The second is I have carefully analyzed the youth problem, youth unemployment problem. And basically what happens is the unemployment is very high when the youth come into the market, and it goes down. This is shown in one of the graphs in my working paper, which you can download. So it's really an issue, in my view, in my analytical view, of matching jobs and skills. So this is exactly the problem which I'm not saying the budget will address all these problems, but there is a gap between the perceptions of people who enter the market and what the market requires in terms of jobs. So the idea is, if they get experience working in these companies, whether it's through internship or whatever method we can devise, they'll have a better idea of what is needed in these jobs, and hopefully will get those skills. It's not very difficult. I have again investigated, for example, manufacturing companies. They have 3-month courses, 6-month courses, and so on. So it's not as if it requires like a 10-year program. You can impart these skills in a period of year or 2 years and get the results within 2 years.
Okay. One final point that I wanted from you. Is there something in this budget that you as an economist would have liked to see which is not there?
Well, there are hints of it, and I hope it will come. Is basically, I am a person who's worked on tax reform for donkey's years, probably more years than many of the youngsters who work for you. But of course, there are the finance minister has talked about simplification of the GST. I've written a whole paper on it. I've analyzed the GST. She's talked about having a review of the direct tax stuff.
But the regulatory cholesterol still remains.
I do hope.
The concern is there is still too much regulatory cholesterol in the system.
Absolutely right. So one part is the tax simplification and reform, but there's also regulatory cholesterol in other parts of the governance system, where I've also, in the same paper, analyzed suggestions and possibilities of, for example, using AI to remove some of this cholesterol in the general system. So yes, you put your finger on it. These are the two areas where, but you have to remember, it's not all at the union level, and the union government cannot force states to make the changes. Even, for example, in the urban areas, the land issue, all these are there. I agree that these remain an important problem, which hopefully will be addressed in the next 5 years.
Okay. Dr. Arvind Virmani, for joining me and giving us your key takeaways to this union budget. Appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much.